The building had no windows on the lower floors, not because of the architecture, because of what was made inside. In Rochester, New York, on the southern bank of the Genesee River, the Kodak Park manufacturing complex covered more than 2 square miles. It had its own power plant, its own fire department, its own railroad spur. At its peak in the 1980s, it employed over 40,000 people. And at the center of everything, in buildings where daylight was forbidden, workers made something that would eventually hold the most important moments of millions of lives. This is what happened inside those buildings. In the 1980s, photography meant film. There was no alternative, no workaround, no digital option waiting in a pocket. If you wanted to capture something, a birthday, a wedding, a face you were afraid to forget, you loaded a roll of Kodak film into your camera and you trusted the chemistry. Kodak had been making that chemistry since 1880. By the 1980s, the company controlled more than 80% of the film market in the United States. Kodachrome, Ektachrome, Kodacolor, these weren't just product names. They were the names of the light that photographs were made of. A roll of Kodak film looks simple from the outside. A yellow box, a plastic canister, a spool of brown tinted material wound tight. What was actually inside that canister was one of the most complex manufactured objects of the 20th century. 15 to 17 distinct chemical layers, each one thinner than a strand of spider silk, each one performing a precise function in the capture and development of an image. The base was polyester, a clear, dimensionally stable film support coated first with a subbing layer to help the chemistry adhere. Then came the light-sensitive layers. Each layer was sensitive to a different part of the visible spectrum. One responded to blue light, one to green, one to red. Between and beneath those layers were inner layers, filter layers, and antillation coatings, chemical structures that existed solely to prevent light from bouncing inside the film and creating the ghost halos that would ruin a sharp image. At the bottom of the stack, beneath everything, was the remjet backing, a carbon black layer applied to the back of the base that absorbed any light that made it through from behind. The whole structure, from base to top coat, was thinner than a human hair. The factory where this was made was called Building 38. Inside Building 38, the coating machines were among the longest, most precisely engineered pieces of industrial equipment in the world. A single coating machine stretched over 200 feet. The film base entered at one end as a clear, uncoated web, moving at speeds up to 300 feet per minute. As it traveled the length of the machine, it passed under a series of coating heads, each one applying a single layer of emulsion with a precision measured in microns. The emulsions themselves were made in separate buildings. Silver halide crystals, the light-sensitive component of photographic film, were grown in enormous reaction vessels, some holding thousands of gallons. The size and shape of those crystals determined everything about how the film would behave in light. A larger crystal was more sensitive, but less sharp. A smaller crystal was sharper, but needed more light. Kodak's chemists spent decades learning how to grow crystals of exactly the right dimensions and how to grow them consistently, batch after batch, to tolerances that allowed the color of an October afternoon to look the same on film made in March as it did on film made in September. The coating process required darkness so complete it was described by workers as a physical presence. You could feel it, they said, the way you feel a change in air pressure. The coating halls were lit only by safelight, a deep amber glow that the light-sensitive emulsions couldn't respond to. Workers moved through those amber corridors by memory and by feel. The machines they operated, they came to know by sound, the particular rhythm of a coating head running clean, the slight change in pitch that meant a layer was beginning to thin. A coating run lasted hours. During that time, thousands of feet of film base moved continuously through the machine. Any interruption, a coating head blockage, a tension fluctuation in the web, a change in the viscosity of an emulsion could ruin the entire run. Rejected film couldn't be recoated. It had to be stripped, the silver recovered, the base discarded. The silver recovery operation at Kodak Park was enormous. Silver was too valuable to waste. and every rejected run, every trim edge, every splicing tape was processed to recover whatever silver it contained. The recovered silver went back into production. Nothing left the building that still held value. After coating, the film moved into the drying section, a long heated tunnel where the multiple wet layers were fixed and dried in sequence. The temperature profile of the drying tunnel was calibrated to the millimeter. Too much heat too early, and the top layers would skin over before the lower layers had dried, trapping solvent and creating a defect that wouldn't appear until development. In someone's darkroom, weeks or months later. After drying, the coated film was wound onto master rolls in complete darkness and moved to the slitting room. In the slitting room, the wide master rolls were cut into the narrow widths that fit specific camera formats. 135 format, the standard 35 image strip that loaded into most cameras of the era. 120 format, for medium format cameras. Disc format, for the Kodak disc camera introduced in 1982. The slitting blades were maintained to a sharpness that left a cut edge clean enough to pass through a camera's film transport without shedding particles that could settle on the film surface and appear in photographs as small dark specks. After slitting, the film strips were loaded into canisters in complete darkness. Workers at the loading stations, some of them working the same machine for 20 or 30 years, could load a canister by feel alone. The light never came on. The canister was sealed, the DX coating strip applied to the outside to tell a camera's metering system what speed film was inside, and the canister placed into its yellow plastic container. The yellow container went into the yellow box, and the yellow box went out into the light, out of Rochester, by truck and train, and eventually by air, to camera shops and drugstore shelves and supermarket checkout lanes all over the world. The people who bought those yellow boxes almost never thought about what was inside. They thought about what they were going to photograph. That was exactly what Kodak intended. The chemistry was supposed to be invisible. The memories were supposed to be the thing. By the early 1990s, the first consumer digital cameras were appearing in stores. They were expensive, low resolution, and awkward. Kodak's engineers were aware of them. Kodak had, in fact, invented the digital camera. An engineer named Stephen Sasson had built the first working prototype in a Rochester laboratory in 1975. The company had shelved it. Film was too profitable, the market too large, the transition too uncertain. By the time the digital market became impossible to ignore, Kodak had lost years it could not recover. The coating halls in Building 38 began to go quiet, not overnight. Film sales declined slowly at first, then faster. Each year, fewer rolls left Rochester. Each year, more coating machines were idled, more workers took early retirement, more of the long amber corridors went dark in a different way. Not safelight dark, but empty dark. In 2012, Kodak filed for bankruptcy. Building 38 still stands in Kodak Park, which has been renamed Eastman Business Park and now houses dozens of different companies in its former manufacturing buildings. The coating machines are gone. The silver recovery operation is gone. The amber safelight corridors where workers moved by memory are gone. What remains is the building's outline, the dimensions of the rooms, and the particular kind of silence that fills a space where something complicated and important used to happen. Somewhere in a box, in an attic or a closet in any city in the world, there are rolls of undeveloped Kodak film from the 1980s. Weddings, children, vacations, faces, still coiled in their yellow canisters, still holding their chemistry, still waiting for a darkroom that may never come. The light that made those images was captured in a building where no light was allowed. And somewhere in Rochester, the people who ran those machines at 3 in the morning still remember exactly what the darkness felt like.